How will millennials and Gen Zers ever retire if we move into a renter's economy and are subject to the ever-increasing rent prices? A staple of the American dream for the past 100 years, the staple of a middle-class American, has been home ownership. And not only because historically the houses have gone up in value and you can build some equity and you can pull from that equity, you can will that down to your children, you can use it in case you have an emergency, you have that equity. But more importantly, after 30 years of making these payments, you will have your house paid off, meaning in 30 years from now, the only cost on that house monthly is going to be your property taxes and homeowner's insurance. Yes, you're going to have utilities, but you don't have your principal or your interest, and you're not paying the high rent prices. To give you an example of how this is happening in real time today in 2024, the average home in this country is $400,000. If you or I were to go buy that house today at a 7.5% interest rate, put down 3%, 5%, the payment out the door is going to be $3,500. The neighbor right next door who bought the same house 30 years ago, has it paid off, is only paying property taxes and homeowner's insurance for $600. So if you were someone like a boomer who's retiring, would you want to live in a 4-bed, 2-bath house with a pool for only $600 a month or $3,500 a month? Or if you were to rent it, it would probably fall somewhere in between the $2,500 to $2,800 a month. That would make retiring for boomers significantly more difficult and uncomfortable. The fact that so many boomers have their house paid off and only have a small housing burden monthly allows them to have extra money to buy things for their grandkids, travel, not stress out. The path that the millennials and Gen Zers are headed on is that we're going to have to rent forever. So what does that look like for our retirement? Because I want to pull this back and go back to 1994. 30 years ago, the average house in this country was $130,000. The average rent was $550. Over the past 30 years, the housing prices went up 3x to $400,000 and rent went up 3.6x to $2,000. So now what if that happens and history repeats itself the next 30 years? And 2054 comes along where millennials, Gen Zers are probably more 2060. But if that same thing happens, the average house in this country will sit around $1.2 million and the average rent will be $7,300. So if you were going to retire in 30 years and our rent's going to be $7,000 or $8,000, that's $100,000 a year that we would need in retirement just for rent. But if we were to buy a house today, next year, or in the next 5 years and have that paid off in 30 years, that $1.2 million home that we got all that appreciation in, we're only paying, guess what? $2,000 a month for property taxes and homeowner insurance compared to $7,000 or $8,000 for people who are going to be renting. So the good news is that we've got 20, 30 years to fix this. But the bad news is if we don't fix it, I don't see how we're going to be able to retire comfortably if we are subject to those high rent prices. So the question becomes, well, why is this happening? Well, ever since the 2008 crash, we have never caught up with supply. The reason the housing prices have gone up so much is there's not enough supply. You might look around on Zillow or Trulia and see a bunch of houses, but when you really break it down per section, per neighborhood, there's only a few homes that people are looking at, so the inventory is incredibly low. That's keeping the prices high. So how we fix this, and I'm not seeing any politician or leader do anything about this, they need to create incentives for builders to make more supply so we have a shot of actually qualifying for these houses. And on the other side of it, you have institutional investors going, wait a minute. The average first-time homebuyer, Gen Z and millennial, can't afford a house, so they're going to have to rent. We're turning into a renter's economy. Now we're going to build a bunch of apartments. We're going to raise the rent because the demand is high. We're also going to buy all these single-family homes so that we can keep the prices elevated. In your hometown or in the city next to you that's a big town, have you driven by brand new allotments of 100 to 200 brand new cookie-cutter homes with a big sign that says homes for rent? Those are 200 homes that individuals should have been able to buy for first-time homebuyers, millennials and Gen Zers, or for boomers who are downsizing for their retirement, were taken by the institutional investors. And now even here in Orlando, every mile there is a new apartment complex going up. And I don't mean just like a cute little 20 unit. I'm talking 600 units with a pool and a state-of-the-art gym. Everything is becoming rentals. So we have to position ourselves correctly. And I'll end it with this. Here's the actual problem too of why we can't qualify as a millennial or Gen Zer, is that in order to qualify for the loan, we need to earn about $100,000 to $120,000 in salary with very little debt in order to get the loan. So even if we have the down payment, for the bank to give us the loan and verify our income, because the interest rate and the housing price is so high, we need about $100,000 to $120,000 with very little debt. So if you have a $700 a month college payment, a $400 car payment, that $1,100 works against you. So the millennials are forced to pay off their debt, save up a big down payment, but also make $100,000 to $120,000 a year. So what do we do about this? First of all, I think it's important that we understand what's going on. I don't want anyone to feel depressed. I don't want anyone to feel scared. Again, the renter's economy, the dangers for millennials and Gen Zers retiring is about 20, 30 years away. But we cannot put our head in the sand, pick our heads up at 57 and go, oh, what are we supposed to do? Let's be very, very diligent and focused on what we can control individually. What we can control, putting a budget together, paying off our debt, educating ourselves. If you ever want to buy a house, I would highly recommend talking to a lender so you can really ask the questions that are necessary. Can I put 3% down? What is an FHA loan, conventional loan? How much would my closing costs be? What income do I need? What debt do I need to pay off? What car do I not need to buy until I get qualified? So I would talk with the lender, even if you're 18 months away from buying or 6 months away, so that you can have a real solid number and plan so you can attack it for the next 6 to 12 months. So chat with the lender, go to your local bank or do some research. You can even go to my profile here and chat with my preferred lender. They work in every state but New York, and they'll put a great plan together for you so that you have something that you can actually work towards. But at the same time of doing all of this for ourselves individually to take responsibility and do the best we can, we also need to continue to talk about the problems, and we need to get people into office. We need politicians in there. We need lawmakers. We need people who care about us, who are talking about the things that really matter, like the housing market. So we have to pay attention not only to the presidential, but we need to pay attention to the local elections that are going on, because a lot of the decisions being made are those people in Congress from all different areas around the country. And we think, oh, they're in New York, I don't care who's the senator there, or they're in Florida, I don't care. It matters to all of us because they're the ones voting on all of these bills. So let's work together. Let's be individually responsible, do the best that we can, as well as being educated and making sure we get the right people in there so we can save the American dream for the millennials and Gen Zers. The boomers may or may not help us. I hope these messages will reach some of the boomers so that they see the real problem that we're facing. But if they don't, there's enough millennials and Gen Zers that we can stick together and make a change. Even the Gen Xers are coming around, and I think they're going to help us. So don't worry, but it's important to be educated on it because we do not want a renter's economy, but we're going to be just fine. So I appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next video.